Elon Musk continues to be the talk of the town in recent days. Thanks to situations such as his recent refusal to go ahead with the purchase of Twitter, or the comments he's made regarding US politics, the man is on everyone's lips. These events are causing a domino effect that, believe it or not, is bringing a lot of benefits to his companies. Of course, there are some cases where it's not very nice to be talked about, and you could say that's what's happening with this story. While all publicity, good or bad, can be used, it's safe to say that this one will become a stain on SpaceX's future projects. What exactly happened with SpaceX's test of the massive prototype rocket? Why did it explode without leaving the launch pad? Was it a human error, or was it just a mistake, simply because it's an example model? Although this is not the first time SpaceX has suffered a mishap with its projects, we could say that, at least on this occasion, what happened was something that Musk's team did not expect. Even if it was an early version of a product, the fact that it was exploited in this way has put several researchers on alert. Let's take a look at what happened to the test rocket. As far as is known, engineers and researchers are still testing and collating the results, as no one expected the project to suffer such a spectacular failure. For those who don't know, a few days ago, there was an explosion on the launch pad of SpaceX's latest plan. The incident reportedly occurred during the testing of a massive prototype of a certain rocket, which had been tested and developed by the company. The liftoff attempt was clearly a failure, and the company has been assessing the damage ever since. It was Elon Musk himself who provided most of this information via his Twitter account. Of course, people on social media were quick to weigh in, with several of them expressing their displeasure with the tycoon's statements. The prototype rocket was an early version of the mode of transport SpaceX calls Starship. Among the speculation that's been heard is that the failure may have had to do with the ignition of the engines while the vehicle was still tethered to its launch pad. The incident occurred in South Texas, and thanks to images captured by NASA spaceflight, we know what the explosion looked like at the site. It should be noted that spaceflight is not a media outlet related to any space agency. So, it is safe to say that the information has not been altered by SpaceX to minimize or maximize damage. During the fire, several flames rose and soon approached the engines. Upon touching them, they exploded and were preceded by several plumes of gray smoke. When the smoke finally cleared and people were able to approach the device, there were no visible signs of external damage to the cameras on its surface, leading to the conclusion that the live feed of the spaceflight was still active. Elon Musk has stated on several occasions that the Starship project is linked to one of SpaceX's main goals, which is to bring the first humans to Mars. This is why he has previously outlined his plans for such machinery, as well as expressing certain changes it has undergone, which seem to go hand in hand with the transformation SpaceX has undergone over the years. Starship's designs have undergone several modifications in an effort to achieve the perfect rocket for the company's first trips. And that is why both the workers and Musk himself have committed on several occasions and verbally to the project. As is known, SpaceX won a contract with NASA last year. The document agreed to a payment of at least $3 billion to be spent on Starship, while the machine was being fine-tuned to meet the space agency's plans. Some of those goals include returning astronauts to the surface of the moon. That's right, if SpaceX's design is achieved, man would set foot on the moon for the first time in 5 decades. However, it's impossible to forget what happened to the Starship, and returning to the subject, Musk explained in the same tweet what he surmises happened to the prototype's engine. Quote, "Cryogenic fuel is an additional challenge," Musk announced, referring to the propellant with which SpaceX planned to power Starship. A fuel that must be kept at extremely cold temperatures, quote, "because, on contact with air, it evaporates and creates an explosion hazard for the fuel." So, being in a particularly oxygenated atmosphere like Earth can produce these results. We have reached the pause in the middle of the video. As you have seen so far, what happened to the test model of the rocket may have been caused by the type of fuel used during testing. Despite Musk's words, it seems that it is still too early to use cryogenic material in a rocket that is supposedly planned to carry people to Mars. Or what do you think? Let's move on to the news of the explosion. In itself, it could be said that any fuel used for rockets has a high risk of fire mishap, and even more so when that component is mixed with gases already in the environment. As for the Starship, the rocket has two sections, to which attention must be paid. On the one hand, there is a large bullet-shaped spacecraft, which is intended to hold dozens of people and/or large satellites. This cabin is at the top of the project, so its rear is mostly made up of those thrusters that are supposed to lift the machine into orbit. That's what went wrong. The boosters on the bottom of the rocket. By its nature, the prototype was programmed to hold more than 30 rocket engines, as those would be the ones that would carry out the thrust of the spacecraft. The problem? That said, the boosters exerted more thrust than any fuel humans had ever used before. That's what happened this Monday. To understand the situation better, we'll give you the example of the Saturn V. That spacecraft carried several astronauts on various Apollo missions. These experiments were aimed at landing on the surface of the moon. So, to achieve the feat and lift the machine, 5 of the largest engines of the time were fitted to its rear. 5! That's nothing, considering Starship was assembled from more than 30, which also use cryogenic fuel. It seems SpaceX pulled out all the stops to launch the Starship prototype this year, all as an attempt to show its progress to NASA as its new creation is launched into orbit. With several successful missions of the spacecraft, people were expecting this to be just another success for the company, mainly because in May of last year, it conducted another test with an older prototype model. What happened to it? Nothing. It didn't catch fire or crash, and it landed upright without any problems. While it is true that there were many failures before that success, the project's workers hoped that their success was a sign that they were on the right track. With what has happened, all that remains is for them to return to the proving ground and continue to refine their project. As the topic of the explosion has remained on many people's lips, SpaceX did not respond to what happened or offer any further comment for a long time. Similarly, they decided that they would not talk about other issues concerning the company, such as commercial space travel. Despite this, Elon Musk and the company have always been very clear on the issue of failed rocket tests. It's still a good thing for them, as it gives engineers the opportunity to build, test, and modify ship designs as needed. Each time such a problem occurs, SpaceX saves time and money on additional testing, as the failure automatically rules out the prototype in question. And while on the subject of SpaceX, last month, after more than a year of waiting, the Federal Aviation Administration granted the company environmental clearance to launch Starship into space. Although the FAA is still reviewing the company's application for a general launch license, it is expected that if it begins to get better results, the document will finally be released. Quote, "The SpaceX application must meet the safety, risk, and financial responsibility requirements requested by the FAA," the agency said in a statement last month. The FAA will make a licensing determination until SpaceX provides all outstanding information and the agency can fully analyze it. While the news may put many people off, Musk is determined to achieve his goal of sending people to Mars, which is why he and his SpaceX team are already preparing a second launch site for their next launch. This time from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where most rocket launches take place. And with this final comment, we mark the last part of the video. Although Elon and his team have tried to justify what happened with the test model of the rocket, we cannot deny that the fact that a spacecraft can explode so easily can generate some fear in people. Just think about it. Who would want to get on a rocket that could fail because of its fuel? Would people really volunteer to travel like that? The only good thing about all this is that we're talking about a test model, which has not yet been given the green flag. it looks like SpaceX will have to spend more time on this project. Finally, please leave your comments on what's new, and share with us any topics and news you'd like to see featured in future videos. Thanks for getting to this point. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. All your support gives us the opportunity to reach more people. See you next time.